Welcome to West Film. We bring you the best movie recaps, reviews, ending explained videos, and hidden details from your favorite films. If you love great movies, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new upload. Now grab some popcorn, and let's jump into today's movie. This performance helped solidify his reputation not just as an action star, but as a versatile entertainer capable of leading in multiple genres. Following Central Intelligence, Johnson continued to balance action and comedy in films like Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle, further cementing this dual identity. Kevin Hart, on the other hand, entered the film as one of the most prominent comedians in the world, known for high-energy stand-up specials like Kevin Hart, Laugh at My Pain, and successful comedy films like Ride Along. Hart had built a persona centered on rapid-fire delivery, exaggerated reactions, and a self-deprecating sense of humor. In Central Intelligence, he plays Galvin Joyner, a former high school golden boy who has settled into a mundane adult life far removed from the promise of his youth. Hart's role required him to act as both the comedic engine and emotional anchor of the film. While he maintained his signature humor, he also explored themes of disappointment, regret, and identity. His chemistry with Johnson is central to the film's success, built on a classic odd couple dynamic where Hart's anxious, grounded character contrasts sharply with Johnson's unpredictable, intense Bob Stone. Hart's performance reinforces his ability to carry a narrative while sharing the spotlight, and it expanded his appeal beyond pure comedy into more character-driven storytelling. The pairing of Johnson and Hart proved so effective that it became a recurring collaboration in later projects, most notably the Jumanji franchise. Their dynamic in Central Intelligence set a template for buddy comedies in the modern era, blending physical humor with character-based storytelling. It also demonstrated how two stars from very different entertainment backgrounds could complement each other in unexpected ways. Amy Ryan, known for her dramatic roles in films like Gone Baby Gone and her work on the television series The Office, plays CIA agent Pamela Harris. Her casting added a layer of credibility and seriousness to the film's espionage elements. Ryan's performance is more restrained than the leads, serving as a counterbalance to the film's comedic tone. She brings a sense of authority and ambiguity to her character, keeping the audience uncertain about her true intentions for much of the story. Her presence highlights the film's attempt to merge comedy with elements of a spy thriller. Danielle Nicolette, portraying Maggie Johnson, Calvin's wife and former high school crush, contributes to the emotional stakes of the story. Her character represents the life Calvin has built and the stability he risks losing as he becomes entangled in Bob's chaotic world. Nicolette's performance adds warmth and relatability, grounding the narrative in personal relationships rather than just action and comedy. Aaron Paul, widely recognized for his role in Breaking Bad, appears in a smaller but significant role tied to the film's central mystery. His involvement brings an additional layer of intrigue, particularly for audiences familiar with his dramatic work. Although his screen time is limited, his presence contributes to the unfolding twists and reinforces the film's connection to the espionage genre. The supporting cast, including Jason Bateman in a cameo role, enhances the film's comedic texture. Bateman's brief appearance is particularly memorable, offering a sharp, unexpected moment that underscores the film's themes of identity and transformation. In terms of career impact, Central Intelligence played a significant role in strengthening the brand identities of its two leads. For Dwayne Johnson, it marked a turning point where his comedic capabilities were no longer secondary to his action credentials. For Kevin Hart, it reinforced his status as a leading man capable of anchoring major studio productions alongside global superstars. The film's commercial success demonstrated the viability of their partnership, influencing casting decisions and the development of similar projects in Hollywood. When Central Intelligence was released in 2016, it entered a cinematic landscape already saturated with action comedies and buddy films. What allowed it to stand out, though, wasn't just its humor or star power, but the way it tapped into cultural conversations about identity, self-perception, and the lingering psychological effects of adolescence. While it may not be considered a groundbreaking film in the traditional historical sense, its cultural footprint reveals a more nuanced influence, one that reflects shifting societal attitudes during the mid-2010s. One of the most immediate and recognizable impacts of the film was its contribution to internet culture, particularly through memes and viral clips. The early sequence featuring Dwayne Johnson as an overweight, bullied teenager performing enthusiastically to "My Lovin', You're Never Gonna Get It," became widely shared across social media. This moment, both comedic and unexpectedly vulnerable, resonated with audiences for its relatability. It highlighted themes of bullying and self-expression, and the exaggerated visual contrast between Johnson's adult physique and his younger character became a recurring joke online. Memes often used the scene to comment on transformation, glow-ups, and the unpredictability of personal growth. At a deeper level, the film engaged with the cultural concept of high school hierarchy and its long-term effects. The character of Calvin Joyner, played by Kevin Hart, represents a familiar narrative. The former popular student who peaks early and struggles to maintain that sense of identity into adulthood. This theme struck a chord at a time when social media platforms like Facebook and Instagram were increasingly encouraging people to revisit and curate their pasts. High school reunions, like the one central to the film's plot, became symbolic events where people measured their present lives against their past expectations. The film also reflects evolving attitudes toward masculinity. Traditionally, action heroes were portrayed as stoic, emotionally distant figures. Johnson's character, Bob Stone, subverts this expectation by combining physical strength with emotional openness and social awkwardness. His character openly expresses affection, seeks validation, and struggles with insecurity, all while maintaining his role as a highly skilled CIA agent. This blend of traits contributed to a broader cultural shift in how male characters were depicted in mainstream cinema, aligning with the growing acceptance of vulnerability as a component of masculinity, a theme that would continue to develop in later films and television shows. In terms of comedic trends, Central Intelligence reinforced the popularity of the buddy comedy formula while modernizing it for a new generation. The dynamic between Johnson and Hart became a template for future collaborations, influencing casting decisions across Hollywood. Their chemistry demonstrated that audiences were drawn not just to individual stars, but to the interplay between contrasting personalities, a trend visible in subsequent films that prioritize character relationships as much as plot-driven action. The film also contributed to the ongoing blending of genres by combining elements of espionage thrillers with broad comedy, reflecting a broader industry movement toward hybrid storytelling. This approach allowed the film to appeal to multiple audience segments, from fans of action-packed narratives to those seeking light-hearted entertainment. Its success encouraged studios to invest in similar genre-crossing projects, further shaping the direction of mainstream cinema in the late 2010s. Another notable aspect of the film's cultural impact is its commentary on bullying and redemption. While the film approaches these themes with humor, it doesn't entirely dismiss their seriousness. Bob Stone's transformation from a bullied teenager into a confident adult serves as a form of wish fulfillment, but it also raises questions about how people cope with past trauma. The film suggests that personal reinvention is possible, while acknowledging that emotional scars can persist. This duality resonated with audiences who had experienced similar challenges, contributing to broader discussions about mental health and self-worth. The portrayal of the CIA and government agencies in the film also reflects a particular cultural moment. In the years following heightened global awareness of surveillance and intelligence operations, films often depicted such organizations with a mix of skepticism and intrigue. Amy Ryan's character embodies this ambiguity, representing authority while remaining somewhat unpredictable. This portrayal aligns with broader trends in media where institutions are neither fully trusted nor entirely villainized, mirroring public sentiment during that period. From a global perspective, Central Intelligence benefited from the international appeal of its leads. Dwayne Johnson's worldwide recognition and Kevin Hart's growing global fan base helped the film reach audiences beyond the United States. This contributed to the globalization of Hollywood comedies, demonstrating that humor rooted in character dynamics and universal themes could transcend cultural boundaries. The film's success in international markets reinforced the importance of casting actors with broad appeal, influencing how studios approach global distribution strategies. The film's marketing campaign also played a role in its cultural presence. The promotional appearances of Johnson and Hart, often characterized by playful banter and improvisation, became viral content in their own right. Interviews, social media posts, and behind-the-scenes clips blurred the line between the actors' real-life personalities and their on-screen characters, strengthening audience engagement and creating a sense of authenticity that extended beyond the film itself. In terms of historical significance, Central Intelligence may not be remembered as a defining cinematic milestone, but it serves as a snapshot of mid-2010s entertainment culture. It encapsulates the era's emphasis on relatability, self-awareness, and the blending of genres, while also highlighting the increasing importance of digital platforms in shaping a film's reception and longevity. The memes, clips, and online discussions it generated ensured that its influence extended well beyond the traditional theater experience. The making of Central Intelligence is filled with interesting production choices, creative risks, and collaborative energy that ultimately shape the film's tone and success. While the finished product presents a seamless blend of action and comedy, the story behind the scenes reveals a carefully constructed balance between improvisation, logistical challenges, and deliberate directorial decisions. The film was directed by Rawson Marshall Thurber, who had previously demonstrated a knack for character-driven comedy with We're the Millers. Thurber's approach to Central Intelligence was rooted in the idea that the film should feel grounded in character, even when situations became absurd. He emphasized the emotional core of the story, particularly the relationship between Bob Stone and Calvin Joyner, ensuring that their dynamic would resonate beyond simple comedic setups. Thurber has often spoken about wanting the audience to care about the characters first, letting the humor emerge naturally from their personalities and interactions. One of the most notable behind-the-scenes elements was the casting process. The pairing of Dwayne Johnson and Kevin Hart wasn't a given at first, but once both actors were attached, the entire tone of the film evolved. Their chemistry became a central focus during production, rather than something strictly dictated by the script. Thurber encouraged improvisation, particularly in dialogue-heavy scenes, allowing Johnson and Hart to play off each other's energy and produce many spontaneous moments that made it into the final cut. Improvisation was especially important for Hart, whose comedic style thrives on quick reactions and exaggerated delivery. Many of his lines were adjusted or expanded during filming, often through multiple takes with different variations of the same scene. Dwayne Johnson, known for his disciplined approach, adapted to this style by loosening his performance and embracing unpredictability. This collaborative environment let both actors push each other creatively, enhancing the authenticity of their on-screen relationship. Filming primarily took place in and around Boston, which doubled as the story's fictional setting. The choice of Boston was strategic, offering a mix of urban landscapes, suburban neighborhoods, and recognizable architecture that could support both the action sequences and the more intimate character moments. Locations included high school settings for the reunion scenes, office spaces for Garvin's workplace, and various streets and buildings used in chase sequences. The city's versatility allowed the production team to create a believable world without leaning too heavily on studio sets. One of the more challenging aspects of production involved balancing the film's action sequences with its comedic tone. The film features several high-energy moments, including shootouts, car chases, and physical confrontations, and coordinating these scenes required careful planning, particularly given the need to integrate humor without undermining the tension. Stunt coordinators worked closely with the director and actors to ensure the action felt realistic while still leaving room for comedic beats. Dwayne Johnson performed many of his own stunts, drawing on his physical training and experience from previous action roles. A particularly interesting production detail involves the transformation of Johnson's character into his younger, overweight self. The opening scene required a combination of visual effects, prosthetics, and body doubles to achieve the desired look. The filmmakers used digital face replacement technology to map Johnson's face onto another actor's body, creating a surreal but effective portrayal of Bob Stone's past. This sequence was crucial to establishing the emotional foundation of the character, and considerable effort went into making it both humorous and sympathetic. The film also faced the challenge of maintaining a consistent tone throughout its narrative shifts. Moving between comedy and espionage thriller elements required precise editing and pacing. The editing team played a significant role in shaping the final product, selecting takes that preserved the spontaneity of the performances while ensuring narrative clarity. Scenes were often trimmed or restructured to maintain momentum, particularly in the second half of the film, where the plot becomes more complex. Behind the camera, the production team worked to create a visual style that complemented the story without overshadowing it. While the film doesn't rely heavily on stylized cinematography, it uses clean, functional visuals that let the performances take center stage, a decision that reflects Thurber's focus on character-driven storytelling. The camera work is designed to capture reactions and interactions, often using medium shots and close-ups to emphasize the chemistry between the leads. Another notable aspect of production was the atmosphere on set. Both Johnson and Hart are known for their strong work ethic, but also for their sense of humor and camaraderie, which translated into a positive working environment where cast and crew felt comfortable experimenting and taking creative risks. Behind-the-scenes footage and interviews reveal a set filled with laughter, with the two leads frequently engaging in playful banter even when the cameras weren't rolling. This energy contributed to the authenticity of their on-screen relationship. Amy Ryan, who plays CIA agent Pamela Harris, brought a different dynamic to the set. Known for her dramatic background, she approached her role with a level of seriousness that helped ground the film's more fantastical elements. Her interactions with the rest of the cast added a layer of tension and credibility, particularly in scenes involving the film's central conflict. Ryan has spoken about the challenge of maintaining a straight-faced performance amid the comedic chaos, highlighting the delicate balance her role required. The production also included several small but memorable cameos, such as the appearance of Jason Bateman. His involvement added an extra layer of humor and surprise, and his scenes were crafted to leave a strong impression despite his limited screen time. These cameo roles were carefully integrated into the story, ensuring that they enhanced rather than distracted from the main narrative. One of the more subtle behind-the-scenes decisions involved the film's portrayal of friendship and identity. The narrative of Central Intelligence is structured as a hybrid between a classic buddy comedy and a spy thriller, blending personal character development with a high-stakes conspiracy plot. At its core, The film follows a familiar storytelling framework. An ordinary individual is pulled into an extraordinary situation, forced to confront both external dangers and internal conflicts. What distinguishes the film, though, is how it interweaves humor with emotional backstory, creating a narrative that is both entertaining and thematically cohesive. The story begins with flashbacks set during a high school assembly, introducing a younger version of Bob Stone, then known as Robbie Weirdicht. This opening sequence is crucial to establishing the emotional foundation of the film. Robbie is publicly humiliated by his peers, stripped of his dignity in front of the entire school while dancing to My Lovin', You're Never Gonna Get It. The scene is both comedic and uncomfortable, highlighting the cruelty of teenage social dynamics. In contrast, Calvin Joyner is presented as the admired and confident golden boy, delivering a speech about limitless potential. This juxtaposition sets up the central thematic conflict, the unpredictability of life after adolescence and the gap between expectation and reality. The narrative then shifts to the present day, where Calvin, played by Kevin Hart, is now an accountant living a relatively unremarkable life. This transition marks the first major structural turning point, moving from past to present and revealing how the characters have evolved or, in Calvin's case, stagnated. His dissatisfaction is subtle but evident, particularly in his interactions with his wife and his reluctance to attend his high school reunion, establishing the internal conflict that will drive his character arc. The inciting incident occurs when Calvin reconnects online with Bob Stone, now played by Dwayne Johnson. Their reunion begins innocently enough, with Bob appearing friendly but slightly eccentric. The tone quickly shifts, however, when Calvin becomes entangled in Bob's secret life as a CIA operative. This moment propels the narrative into its central conflict, blending comedic misunderstandings with genuine danger. The film uses this transition effectively, moving from a grounded, character-driven setup into a more dynamic and unpredictable storyline. As the plot unfolds, the film builds through a series of escalating complications. Calvin is thrust into a world of espionage, forced to navigate situations far beyond his comfort zone. These sequences are structured around a pattern of tension and releasey moments of danger followed by comedic relief, often driven by Calvin's reactions to the absurdity of his circumstances. This pacing keeps the audience engaged while maintaining a balance between the two genres. A key narrative device in the film is the uncertainty surrounding Bob Stone's true identity and intentions. Throughout the middle act, the audience is encouraged to question whether Bob is a trustworthy ally or a potential threat. This ambiguity is reinforced by the introduction of CIA agent Pamela Harris, played by Amy Ryan, who presents an alternative version of events, claiming Bob may be a rogue agent responsible for dangerous activities. This creates a moral dilemma for Calvin, adding depth to the story and transforming it from a straightforward comedy into a narrative with genuine stakes. The midpoint of the film serves as a critical turning point, where Calvin must decide whether to trust Bob or side with the authorities. This decision is not only a plot necessity but also a reflection of Calvin's internal struggle. Choosing to trust Bob represents a step outside his comfort zone, a rejection of his passive, risk-averse lifestyle, and marks the beginning of Calvin's transformation as he starts to take a more active role in the story. From this point onward, the narrative accelerates toward its climax. The stakes rise through a series of revelations about a missing encryption key and the identity of a mysterious figure known as the Black Badger. These plot elements introduce a more traditional spy thriller structure, with twists designed to keep the audience guessing. While some of these twists are predictable, they still serve their purpose in maintaining suspense and driving the action forward. The climax takes place during the high school reunion, bringing the story full circle. This setting is symbolically significant, representing the characters' past and the identities they once held. The confrontation that occurs here resolves both the external conflict and the internal character arcs, Bob faces his past trauma, while Calvin confronts his feelings of inadequacy and regret. The action sequences are interwoven with comedic moments, ensuring the tone remains consistent even at the peak of tension. One of the strengths of the film's narrative structure is its use of symmetry. The story begins and ends at the high school, creating a sense of closure and continuity. This circular structure reinforces a theme of personal growth, suggesting that, while the past cannot be changed, it can be reinterpreted and overcome. The reunion serves as both a literal and metaphorical stage for this transformation. In the resolution, the film ties up its central plot threads while emphasizing the bond between the two protagonists. The mystery of the Black Badger is resolved, and the characters emerge with a renewed sense of identity and purpose. Calvin gains confidence and a willingness to embrace uncertainty, while Bob finds acceptance and validation. The final scenes reinforce the film's message about friendship and self-acceptance, leaving the audience with a sense of optimism. From a structural perspective, Central Intelligence follows a relatively conventional three-act format but distinguishes itself through its character-driven approach. The first act establishes the characters and their past, the second introduces conflict and uncertainty, and the third resolves both the plot and the emotional arcs. The film's pacing is generally consistent, with a steady progression of events building toward the climax. That said, the narrative isn't without its flaws. Some critics have noted that the plot can feel formulaic, particularly in its reliance on familiar tropes from both comedy and action genres. At first glance, Central Intelligence presents itself as a straightforward action comedy, driven by humor, fast-paced sequences, and the dynamic pairing of Dwayne Johnson and Kevin Hart. Beneath this comedic surface, though, lies a surprisingly layered exploration of themes related to identity, transformation, trauma, and the lingering impact of social perception. The film uses both narrative elements and visual cues to communicate these ideas, often embedding meaning within its humor and character interactions. One of the most prominent themes in the film is identity, particularly the contrast between how individuals see themselves and how they're perceived by others. This theme is introduced immediately in the opening sequence, where Bob Stone as a teenager is defined by his peers through ridicule and humiliation. His identity is imposed on him, shaped by others' cruelty rather than his own self-understanding. Calvin Joyner, by contrast, is celebrated and admired, his identity reinforced by external validation. As the story progresses, these roles are reversed in many ways, challenging the notion that identity is fixed or determined by early experiences. Bob Stone's transformation from a bullied teenager into a confident CIA agent represents the idea of reinvention. However, the film complicates this transformation by showing that his past continues to influence his present behavior. Despite his physical strength and professional success, Bob retains many of the insecurities and emotional scars from his youth. His enthusiasm, awkwardness, and need for approval are all remnants of his earlier experiences. This suggests that while external change is possible, internal healing is a more complex and ongoing process. The film uses Bob's character to explore the idea that identity isn't simply something that can be discarded or replaced, but something that evolves over time. Calvin Joyner's journey reflects a different aspect of identity, the fear of losing one's former self. As a high school star who was expected to achieve great things, Calvin struggles with the realization that his adult life doesn't match his earlier promise. His reluctance to attend the reunion and his dissatisfaction with his career reveal a deep sense of disconnection from his past identity. Through his interactions with Bob, Calvin is forced to confront this gap and reconsider what success and fulfillment mean. His arc emphasizes the importance of self-acceptance and the willingness to redefine one's identity beyond societal expectations. Another central theme in the film is the long-term impact of bullying and social hierarchy. The opening sequence isn't just a comedic setup, it establishes a trauma that shapes Bob's entire life. The humiliation he experiences isn't forgotten, it influences his behavior, relationships, and self-perception. The film doesn't dwell on this trauma in a heavy-handed way, but it consistently returns to it as a source of motivation and conflict. Bob's desire to reconnect with Calvin is partly driven by a need for validation and closure, highlighting how past experiences can continue to affect people long after they occurred. The high school reunion itself serves as a powerful symbol within the narrative. It represents a convergence of past and present, a space where characters are forced to confront who they were and who they've become. For Calvin, the reunion is a source of anxiety, since it threatens to expose the gap between his past image and his current reality. For Bob, it's an opportunity for redemption, a chance to rewrite the narrative of his youth. The reunion symbolizes the enduring influence of formative experiences and the human desire to reconcile with the past. Friendship is another key theme explored through the evolving relationship between Bob and Calvin. Initially, their connection is based on shared history, but it develops into something deeper as they navigate the challenges of the present. Their friendship is unconventional, marked by tension, misunderstandings, and contrasting personalities, yet it ultimately becomes a source of strength and growth for both characters. The film suggests that true friendship isn't about similarity or convenience, but about mutual support and acceptance, even in the face of differences. The theme of trust is closely linked to this relationship. Throughout the film, Calvin is repeatedly placed in situations where he must decide whether to trust Bob or the authorities pursuing him. This uncertainty is reinforced by conflicting information and ambiguous motivations, creating a sense of moral complexity. Trust becomes a test of character, requiring Calvin to move beyond his instinct for safety and embrace a more intuitive, risk-taking approach. This theme reflects a broader idea about the importance of believing in others, even when certainty isn't guaranteed. Masculinity is also explored in a subtle but meaningful way. Traditional action films often depict male protagonists as emotionally detached and invulnerable. Bob Stone, by contrast, combines physical strength with emotional openness, expressing affection, insecurity, and enthusiasm without restraint. This portrayal challenges conventional stereotypes, presenting a more nuanced version of masculinity that includes vulnerability and emotional expression. Calvin, on the other hand, represents a more restrained and socially conditioned form of masculinity, initially reluctant to step outside his comfort zone. Their interaction highlights the diversity of male experiences and the limitations of rigid gender expectations. Symbolism in the film is often conveyed through visual contrasts and recurring motifs. One example is the use of physical appearance as a symbol of transformation. Bob's dramatic change in physique represents external success, but the film repeatedly contrasts this with his internal struggles, emphasizing that true transformation goes beyond the physical. Similarly, Calvin's relatively unchanged appearance serves as a symbol of stagnation, reflecting his difficulty in moving forward from his past. Another symbolic element is the concept of names and identity. Bob Stone's original name, Robbie Weirdicht, carries a negative connotation, reflecting how he was perceived by others. His decision to adopt a new name symbolizes an attempt to redefine himself, to escape the limitations imposed by his past. However, the persistence of his old identity within his behavior suggests that names alone can't fully alter one's sense of self. The visual identity of Central Intelligence plays a crucial role in shaping its tone, balancing the grounded realism of a spy thriller with the exaggerated energy of comedy. While the film doesn't aim for highly stylized or experimental cinematography, Its visual approach is carefully constructed to support character interactions, enhance comedic timing, and maintain clarity during action sequences. The cinematography, led by Barry Peterson, reflects a deliberate choice to prioritize storytelling and performance over visual spectacle, resulting in a clean and accessible aesthetic. One of the defining aspects of the film's visual style is its use of naturalistic lighting. Many scenes are lit in a way that mimics real-world environments, particularly in indoor settings such as offices, homes, and school buildings. This approach helps ground the story, making the characters and their experiences feel relatable despite the increasingly implausible situations they encounter. The lighting avoids heavy stylization, instead opting for balanced illumination that keeps the focus on the actors' expressions and interactions, which matters especially in a film driven by dialogue and character dynamics, where subtle facial reactions often carry the comedic weight. In contrast, the action sequences employ more dramatic lighting and composition to heighten tension and excitement. Night scenes, for example, often feature stronger contrast between light and shadow, creating a sense of urgency and unpredictability. These visual shifts signal to the audience that the tone is temporarily moving closer to that of a traditional spy thriller. Even in these moments, though, the film maintains a level of visual clarity that keeps the action easy to follow. Quick cuts, steady camera movements, and clear framing prevent the sequences from becoming disorienting, a common issue in modern action films. Framing and composition are used effectively to emphasize the contrast between the two main characters played by Dwayne Johnson and Kevin Hart. Their physical difference is often highlighted through shot composition, with Johnson's larger frame dominating the screen while Hart is positioned in a way that accentuates his smaller stature. This visual contrast reinforces the comedic dynamic between the characters, making their interactions more visually engaging. The filmmakers frequently use medium shots and two shots to capture both actors in the same frame, letting their chemistry play out naturally without excessive cutting. Close-ups are another important tool in the film's visual language, used strategically to capture moments of emotional vulnerability or comedic reaction. Kevin Hart's expressive face, in particular, benefits from this approach, as his reactions often serve as the punchline to a scene. Similarly, close-ups of Dwayne Johnson highlight the contrast between his imposing appearance and his character's often awkward or overly enthusiastic behavior. By focusing on facial expressions, the film enhances its comedic timing and deepens the audience's connection to the characters. Camera movement in Central Intelligence is generally smooth and controlled, avoiding the shaky handheld style that had become common in some action films. Tracking shots and steady pans are used to follow characters through environments, maintaining a sense of continuity and spatial awareness. This approach contributes to the film's polished feel, ensuring the audience can easily follow both the narrative and the action during chase sequences, with the camera often moving alongside the characters to create momentum without sacrificing clarity. The film's color palette is relatively neutral, dominated by natural tones that reflect its contemporary setting. Urban environments are depicted with a mix of grays, blues, and muted colors, while interior spaces often feature warmer tones that create a sense of familiarity and comfort. This restrained use of color supports the film's grounded aesthetic, preventing it from feeling overly stylized or artificial. Certain scenes, however, introduce more vibrant colors, particularly during comedic moments or flashbacks, creating a visual contrast that aligns with the shifting tone. One of the more visually distinctive sequences is the opening flashback, which depicts Bob Stone's high school humiliation. This scene uses brighter lighting and a more exaggerated visual style to emphasize its comedic and emotional impact. The staging of the scene, including the use of slow motion and reaction shots, amplifies the sense of spectacle and discomfort. This stylistic choice sets the tone for the film, signaling that it will blend humor with moments of genuine emotional weight. The use of locations also contributes to the film's visual identity. Filmed primarily in Boston, the movie takes advantage of the city's diverse, urban landscape. From school gymnasiums to office buildings and residential neighborhoods, each setting is chosen to reflect a different aspect of the characters' lives. The familiarity of these environments helps anchor the story, making the extraordinary events feel more believable. The production design works in tandem with the cinematography to create spaces that are both functional and visually coherent. Visual motifs are subtly woven throughout the film, reinforcing its themes. One example is the recurring contrast between order and chaos. Calvin's world is initially depicted as structured and predictable, with clean, organized spaces that reflect his cautious personality. As he becomes involved in Bob's world, the environments grow more chaotic, cluttered spaces, dynamic movement, unpredictable action, mirroring Calvin's internal transformation as he moves from a state of control to one of uncertainty and growth. Another motif is the use of reflective surfaces, such as mirrors and glass, often used to frame characters in moments of introspection or self-doubt. While not heavily emphasized, this visual detail aligns with the film's exploration of identity and self-perception, as characters are occasionally shown looking at themselves or framed alongside their reflections, subtly reinforcing the idea of duality and transformation. Special effects in Central Intelligence are used sparingly and primarily in service of the narrative. The audio landscape of Central Intelligence is an essential component of its storytelling, working quietly but effectively to shape the film's tone, pacing, and emotional impact. While the movie is primarily driven by dialogue and character interaction, the soundtrack and sound design play a significant supporting role, reinforcing comedic beats, enhancing action sequences, and deepening the audience's connection to key moments. The film's approach to sound isn't overly complex or experimental, but it's carefully crafted to complement its hybrid nature as both a comedy and a spy thriller. The musical score was composed by Ludwig G. A. Pilcrow-Ranson, known for his ability to blend different musical styles and create memorable, character-driven compositions. Before working on Central Intelligence, G. A. Pilcrow-Ranson had already gained recognition for his work on television series like Community, and he'd later achieve even greater acclaim with projects such as Black Panther. In this film, his score is relatively understated compared to some of his later work, but it still demonstrates a skill for supporting narrative tone without overwhelming the scenes. His score primarily functions as a bridge between the film's comedic and action elements. During high-energy sequences, the music leans toward rhythmic, percussive compositions that evoke the tension and urgency typical of spy thrillers, with driving beats, electronic elements, and subtle orchestral layers creating a sense of momentum that propels the action forward. Unlike more intense action films, though, the score avoids becoming too heavy or dramatic, maintaining a lighter tone that aligns with the film's comedic identity. In contrast, quieter scenes are accompanied by more minimalistic and melodic compositions, often focusing on character development and letting the audience engage with the emotional aspects of the story. The music in these scenes is typically softer and more restrained, using gentle instrumentation to create a sense of intimacy. This balance between energetic and subdued scoring helps the film maintain a consistent emotional rhythm, guiding the audience through its shifts in tone. One of the most memorable uses of music in the film occurs in the opening sequence, which features My Lovin', You're Never Gonna Get It, by En Vogue. This track isn't just a source of humor, it's also a key narrative device. Its upbeat, confident energy contrasts sharply with the humiliation experienced by Bob Stone's younger self, creating a moment that is both comedic and uncomfortable. The song becomes a symbolic marker of that traumatic experience, lingering in the audience's memory and reinforcing the film's themes of identity and transformation. Beyond the score and featured songs, the film's sound design plays a crucial role in enhancing both its comedic and action elements. Sound effects are used strategically to emphasize physical humor, often exaggerating movements or reactions for greater impact as sudden noises, impacts, or environmental sounds are timed precisely to coincide with visual gags, creating a layered comedic effect. This technique ensures the humor doesn't rely solely on dialogue, but is also supported by auditory cues. In action scenes, the sound design becomes more prominent, incorporating gunfire, explosions, and environmental noise to create a sense of realism and intensity. These sounds are carefully balanced to avoid overpowering the dialogue or the score, keeping the audience focused on the characters, and the clarity of these effects contributes to the overall accessibility of the film, making the action easy to follow without becoming overwhelming. Dialogue is another key component of the film's audio design, particularly given the importance of comedic timing. The interactions between Dwayne Johnson and Kevin Hart rely heavily on precise delivery and pacing, and the sound mix ensures their voices remain clear and distinct even during chaotic or noisy scenes. This clarity allows the audience to fully appreciate the nuances of their performances, from subtle inflections to rapid exchanges. The film also makes use of silence and pauses as part of its sound design. In certain moments, the absence of music or background noise creates a sense of anticipation or awkwardness, particularly in comedic situations. These pauses let the audience absorb the humor or tension before the scene progresses, showing an understanding of how sound can shape the rhythm of a scene, not just fill space. Another interesting aspect of the film's audio design is its use of contrast. Just as the visual style contrasts calm, everyday environments with high-energy action, the sound design shifts between quiet, dialogue-driven scenes and loud, dynamic sequences. This contrast helps maintain audience engagement, keeping the film from becoming monotonous, and it reinforces the dual nature of the story, which moves between the ordinary world of Calvin's life and the extraordinary world of espionage. The integration of diegetic sound, a sound that exists within the world of the film, is also noteworthy. Music played within scenes, such as at the high school reunion, contributes to the authenticity of the setting and enhances the sense of immersion. These elements help ground the story, making the environments feel lived in and believable, while also providing opportunities for humor as characters interact with their surroundings in unexpected ways. From a thematic perspective, the soundtrack and sound design subtly reinforce the film's exploration of identity and transformation. The contrast between different musical styles mirrors the contrast between the characters' past and present selves. The use of familiar songs, particularly in the opening and reunion scenes, ties the narrative back to its high school setting, emphasizing the enduring influence of those formative experiences. When Central Intelligence was released in June 2016, it entered a competitive summer box office season dominated by major franchises and high-budget spectacles. Despite this, the film performed strongly both commercially and with general audiences, even as critical reception remained mixed. The contrast between audience enjoyment and critical hesitation makes the film an interesting case study in how entertainment value and artistic evaluation can diverge. From a box office perspective, Central Intelligence was undeniably successful. Produced on a moderate budget compared to other summer releases, the film grossed significantly more than its production costs worldwide. Much of that success can be attributed to the global appeal of its two leads, Dwayne Johnson and Kevin Hart. Their combined star power drew large audiences, particularly in North America, but also internationally, where Johnson's action hero reputation and Hart's growing comedic brand helped attract diverse viewers. The film's financial performance reinforced the viability of mid-budget action comedies in an era increasingly dominated by superhero films and sequels. Audience reception was generally positive, with many viewers praising the chemistry between the two leads. The dynamic between Johnson and Hart was widely regarded as the film's strongest element, often cited as a primary reason for its entertainment value. Viewers appreciated the balance between humor and action, as well as the film's ability to deliver consistent laughs while maintaining a coherent storyline. On platforms like IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes, audience scores tend to run higher than those from professional critics, reflecting a broader trend where mainstream comedies resonate more strongly with general audiences than with reviewers. Critics, however, offered a more divided response. While many acknowledged the charisma of the lead actors, they often pointed to the film's reliance on familiar tropes and predictable plot structure. Reviews frequently described the story as formulaic, noting that it follows a well-worn path typical of buddy comedies and action films. The narrative twists, particularly those involving espionage elements, were sometimes criticized for a lack of originality or depth. Despite these criticisms, even more skeptical reviews often conceded that the film was elevated by its performances, particularly the interplay between Johnson and Hart. One of the most commonly praised aspects of the film was Dwayne Johnson's performance. Critics highlighted his willingness to subvert his usual tough guy image by embracing a more vulnerable and eccentric character. His portrayal of Bob Stone was seen as a refreshing departure from his typical roles, demonstrating a comedic range that hadn't always been fully utilized in his earlier work. This performance contributed to a broader reassessment of Johnson as not just an action star, but a versatile entertainer capable of carrying different types of films. Kevin Hart's performance received a more mixed response. While his energy and comedic timing were widely recognized, some critics felt his character relied too heavily on his established persona. For audiences familiar with Hart's previous work, particularly in films like Ride Along, his role in Central Intelligence didn't always feel like a significant departure. Others argued, though, that his chemistry with Johnson allowed him to explore new dimensions of his comedic style, particularly in moments that required emotional vulnerability. Amy Ryan's role as CIA agent Pamela Harris was also a point of discussion among critics. Her performance was generally praised for adding a sense of seriousness and ambiguity to the film, but some reviewers felt her character was underdeveloped compared to the leads. This critique extended to the film's overall handling of its supporting cast, which, while effective in individual moments, didn't always receive the depth or screen time needed to fully contribute to the narrative. In terms of genre blending, critics had varied opinions. Some appreciated the film's attempt to combine comedy with elements of a spy thriller, noting that it created a more dynamic and engaging experience. Others felt the balance wasn't always consistent, with certain action sequences overshadowing the comedic elements or vice versa. This tension between genres is a common challenge in hybrid films, and Central Intelligence was no exception. The film also faced some minor controversy related to its humor. A few reviewers pointed out that certain jokes, particularly those involving body image or past bullying, could be seen as problematic or insensitive. The opening sequence, which depicts Bob Stone's humiliation as an overweight teenager, was interpreted by some as reinforcing the very stereotypes it sought to critique. Others argued, however, that the film ultimately delivers a message of acceptance and empowerment, framing the character's transformation in a positive light. Despite these criticisms, the overall tone of the film was generally seen as light-hearted and inoffensive, making it accessible to a wide audience. Its PG-13 rating allowed it to appeal to both younger viewers and adults, contributing to its broad commercial success. The film's humor, while sometimes predictable, was considered effective enough to maintain audience engagement throughout its runtime. In terms of awards and formal recognition, Central Intelligence didn't receive major accolades from prestigious institutions. It was acknowledged, however, in more audience-focused contexts, including nominations at events like the People's Choice Awards, reflecting its popularity with general viewers rather than critical acclaim. These nominations highlight the distinction between critical evaluation and audience enjoyment, emphasizing the film's strength as a piece of mainstream entertainment. Another important aspect of the film's reception is its role in shaping the careers of its leads. The success of Central Intelligence reinforced the marketability of Johnson and Hart as a duo, leading to further collaborations in films such as Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle. This partnership became a reliable formula for studios, demonstrating that strong character chemistry could be just as important as high-concept storytelling in attracting audiences. Over time, the film's reputation has remained relatively stable. Although Central Intelligence wasn't initially positioned as a groundbreaking or genre-defining film, its long-term legacy has proven more influential than its critical reception might have suggested at the time of release. Over the years, the film has come to represent a key moment in the evolution of modern buddy comedies, the branding of star-driven entertainment, and the blending of action and humor in mainstream cinema. One of the most immediate and lasting impacts of the film lies in the on-screen partnership between Dwayne Johnson and Kevin Hart. While both actors were already successful individually, Central Intelligence solidified their chemistry as a bankable formula. Their dynamic, built on contrast, improvisation, and mutual comedic timing, became a defining feature of their careers moving forward. This partnership directly influenced the success of later collaborations, most notably Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle and its sequel, where their interplay once again became a central selling point. The success of this pairing had a ripple effect across Hollywood, encouraging studios to prioritize actor chemistry when developing comedy projects rather than relying solely on high-concept premises. Filmmakers began focusing more on the interpersonal dynamics between leads, a shift visible in other buddy comedies and ensemble films that followed, where casting decisions were often driven by the potential for engaging character interactions rather than just star power alone. In terms of genre, Central Intelligence contributed to the continued evolution of the action-comedy hybrid. While the combination of these elements wasn't new, the film demonstrated how effectively they could be balanced when anchored by strong performances. Its approach, integrating comedic dialogue with structured action sequences, helped reinforce a template used in subsequent films. This blend became particularly prominent in the late 2010s, as audiences increasingly sought entertainment that could deliver both excitement and humor within a single narrative. Another aspect of the film's legacy is its role in redefining the public image of Dwayne Johnson. Prior to this film, Johnson was primarily associated with action roles, often portraying physically dominant and emotionally reserved characters. Central Intelligence allowed him to expand his image by embracing vulnerability, awkwardness, and comedic expression. This shift had a lasting impact on his career trajectory, influencing the types of roles he'd take on in the years that followed, and his later performances continued to reflect this balance of strength and humor that became a hallmark of his brand. For Kevin Hart, the film reinforced his position as a leading figure in mainstream comedy while also expanding his appeal. By sharing the spotlight with a global action star, Hart demonstrated his ability to function within larger-scale productions without losing his comedic identity, helping solidify his transition from stand-up comedian and supporting actor to a central figure in major studio releases. The film's success also validated his style of humor in a broader cinematic context, paving the way for more ambitious projects. Culturally, the film's themes of transformation and self-acceptance have contributed to its enduring relevance. The idea that people can redefine themselves, regardless of their past, resonates with audiences across generations. This message, while presented through humor, aligns with broader societal conversations about identity, personal growth, and resilience. The film's portrayal of these themes, though not deeply philosophical, is accessible and relatable, allowing it to maintain a connection with viewers over time. The opening sequence, in particular, has remained a memorable part of the film's legacy. The image of Bob Stone as a bullied teenager, combined with the use of "My love in, You're Never Gonna Get It," continues to circulate in online discussions and retrospectives. This moment encapsulates the film's blend of humor and emotional weight, serving as a reference point for its themes and tone, and highlighting the film's ability to create iconic scenes that persist beyond the initial viewing experience. In the context of Hollywood trends, Central Intelligence represents a successful example of the mid-budget film model at a time when the industry was increasingly focused on large-scale franchises and blockbuster productions. The film demonstrated that smaller, character-driven projects could still achieve significant commercial success, helping sustain interest in similar films and encouraging studios to continue investing in projects that prioritize performance and storytelling over spectacle alone. While the film didn't spawn a direct sequel, discussions about potential follow-ups have persisted over the years. The continued collaboration between Johnson and Hart in other projects has, in some ways, served as an indirect continuation of the dynamic established in Central Intelligence, keeping the spirit of the film alive even without a formal expansion of its narrative. The film's influence can also be seen in the way it approaches humor. Its reliance on character-based comedy, rather than purely situational or slapstick elements, has become more common in subsequent films, by grounding its humor in the personalities and relationships of its characters. Central Intelligence demonstrated a more sustainable approach to comedy, one that allows for both laughs and emotional engagement. From a technological and production standpoint, the film's use of digital effects in the opening sequence contributed to the growing acceptance of such techniques in comedic contexts. While visual effects are often associated with action or fantasy films, their application here showed how they could be used creatively to enhance storytelling and humor, an approach that's since been adopted in other films where digital manipulation serves comedic or narrative goals. The film's presence on streaming platforms and television has further extended its legacy. As audiences revisit it over time, it continues to find new viewers who may not have seen it during its initial release. This accessibility has allowed the film to maintain relevance, becoming a familiar and often recommended option within the action comedy genre. The audience response to Central Intelligence reveals a layered and often personal relationship between viewers and the film. Rather than being remembered as a critically acclaimed landmark, it's widely regarded as a highly rewatchable, comfort-style action comedy. Its appeal is less about innovation and more about familiarity, chemistry, and emotional accessibility. Over time, different audiences have interpreted the film through the lens of their own experiences, particularly around themes of adolescent identity and personal growth. For many viewers, the strongest point of connection comes from the shared nostalgia embedded in the high school setting. The opening sequence, featuring the younger version of Bob Stone being humiliated, resonates deeply with audiences who associate adolescence with social anxiety, embarrassment, or exclusion. The exaggerated nature of the scene doesn't reduce its emotional trouble. If anything, it amplifies a universal feeling of being judged during formative years. Many viewers interpret this moment not simply as comedic exaggeration, but as a symbolic representation of how teenage experiences can leave lasting emotional impressions. The character of Calvin Joyner, played by Kevin Hart, is often seen as one of the most relatable elements of the film. Audiences frequently identify with his sense of stalled potential and the quiet disappointment of adulthood not matching youthful expectations. This interpretation is especially common among viewers navigating their own career uncertainty or reflecting on life choices made after school. Calvin's journey isn't framed as a dramatic failure, but rather as a subtle emotional drift, which makes it feel authentic to many viewers who've experienced similar feelings in real life. Bob Stone, by contrast, is often interpreted as a form of wish fulfillment. His transformation from bullied teenager to confident, physically dominant CIA agent is seen by some audiences as an exaggerated fantasy of overcoming the past. However, the film complicates this interpretation by revealing that Bob's confidence is layered with insecurity and emotional vulnerability. This duality leads viewers to interpret his character in different ways, as some see him as inspirational, while others view him as a symbol of unresolved trauma masked by external success. A significant portion of audience interpretation focuses on the friendship between Bob and Calvin. Many viewers see their relationship as the emotional core of the film, interpreting it as a story about acceptance across differences. Their dynamic is often described as an unlikely friendship that evolves through shared challenges, and audiences appreciate how their bond develops not through instant compatibility, but through conflict, misunderstanding, and gradual trust. This progression is often cited as one of the film's more meaningful emotional arcs, even within its comedic framework. Younger audiences, particularly those who grew up in the social media era, tend to interpret the film through a lens of online identity and public perception. The idea of reinvention, central to Bob's character, aligns with digital culture, where individuals frequently curate and reshape their public personas. Platforms such as Instagram and Facebook reinforce the idea that identity is fluid and performative, and in this context, Bob's transformation is seen not only as physical or emotional, but also symbolic of how people construct identities in modern digital spaces. Many viewers also interpret the film as a commentary on masculinity, though not always in a conscious or academic way. The contrast between Bob's emotional openness and Calvin's initial insecurity reflects two different models of male identity. Some audiences appreciate this portrayal as a more modern take on masculinity, where emotional expression and vulnerability aren't seen as weaknesses. Others view it more simply as a comedic contrast between two personalities. Regardless of interpretation, the film's depiction of male friendship has often been described as refreshing compared to more traditional stoic portrayals in action cinema. Comedy plays a central role in shaping audience perception. The humor is generally seen as accessible and broadly appealing, relying on situational awkwardness, physical comedy, and personality clashes. Different audiences, however, respond differently to these comedic styles, as some viewers find the humor highly effective due to its timing and the chemistry between the leads, while others feel certain jokes are predictable or rely too heavily on established comedic personas. Despite this variation, the film is consistently recognized as entertaining and easy to watch, contributing to its reputation as a safe comedy choice. International audiences often interpret the film differently from domestic viewers. The global recognition of Dwayne Johnson contributes to the film's appeal across different regions, where his action hero persona is widely established, and in these contexts the comedic elements may take a secondary role to the action and character dynamics. Kevin Hart's humor, while culturally specific in some respects, still translates effectively due to its physicality and expressive delivery. As a result, the film is often seen internationally as a character-driven action comedy rather than a purely comedic narrative. Another notable aspect of audience interpretation is the film's rewatchability. Many viewers report that the film gains comfort value over time, becoming something they can enjoy casually rather than intensely analyze. This is partly due to its predictable structure, but also to the strong chemistry between the leads. A familiarity enhances enjoyment as audiences become more attuned to the rhythm of their interactions and comedic timing. Some viewers also engage with the film through a nostalgic lens, especially those who watched it during their teenage or early adult years. In this sense, the film becomes associated with a specific period in their lives, reinforcing its emotional significance beyond its narrative content. The combination of humor, friendship, and self-reflection allows it to function as a light emotional anchor in memory. Character development in Central Intelligence is built around two central figures whose personal journeys run in opposite emotional directions before ultimately converging. The film places equal emphasis on external action and internal transformation, using the evolving relationship between its protagonists, played by Dwayne Johnson and Kevin Hart, as the foundation for its narrative progression. While the plot includes espionage and conspiracy elements, the emotional weight of the film rests almost entirely on how these two characters change over time. Bob Stone, originally introduced as Robbie Weirdict, undergoes the most visually dramatic transformation, but his emotional arc is more complex than his physical change suggests. As a teenager, Robbie is defined by extreme social humiliation and isolation. His identity is shaped externally by ridicule and internally by a deep sense of inadequacy, and this early version of the character establishes the psychological foundation for everything that follows. When he reappears as Bob Stone, he presents himself as confident, assertive, and highly capable, working as a CIA operative. This outward transformation, however, is layered over unresolved emotional trauma. Bob's motivation throughout the film is rooted in a desire for validation and acceptance. His decision to reconnect with Calvin Joyner isn't simply nostalgic, it's emotionally driven. Calvin represents the one person who once showed him kindness during a time of extreme vulnerability, and this connection becomes symbolic for Bob, representing a chance to rewrite the meaning of his past. As the story progresses, it becomes clear that Bob's confidence is partly performative, masking insecurity and a lingering fear of rejection. A key aspect of Bob's arc is his gradual shift from isolation to emotional openness. At the beginning of the film, he operates largely alone, both professionally and personally. As he reconnects with Calvin, he begins to form a genuine bond that isn't based on idealization or past trauma, but on present trust. This evolution is subtle but important, showing Bob learning to build relationships in a healthy and balanced way rather than seeking validation from a single defining moment in his past. By the end of the film, Bob is still eccentric and intense, but more grounded in his sense of self. Calvin Joyner's character arc, by contrast, is defined by stagnation at the beginning and gradual reactivation over the course of the story. As a teenager, Calvin is confident, popular, and seemingly destined for success. As an adult, though, he has settled into a life that feels safe but unremarkable. His career as an accountant reflects stability, but also a lack of fulfillment, and this contrast between expectation and reality is central to his internal conflict. Calvin's initial state is characterized by passivity. He avoids confrontation, resists change, and prefers predictable routines. His reluctance to attend the high school reunion reflects his discomfort with comparing his present self to his past identity. When Bob re-enters his life, Calvin is forced into situations that challenge his sense of control. At first, he reacts with confusion and fear, but over time he begins to adapt. The turning point in Calvin's arc occurs when he chooses to trust Bob despite conflicting information from CIA agent Pamela Harris, played by Amy Ryan. This decision marks the beginning of his transformation from passive observer to active participant. By choosing uncertainty over safety, Calvin steps outside his comfort zone and begins to reclaim agency over his life. This shift isn't immediate or effortless, it's marked by hesitation, mistakes, and moments of doubt. As Calvin becomes more involved in the unfolding events, his confidence gradually rebuilds. However, this confidence is different from the one he had in high school. Rather than being based on external validation or popularity, it's rooted in experience and personal choice. He learns to navigate unpredictable situations, make decisions under pressure, and accept responsibility for outcomes. This evolution reflects a more mature understanding of identity, one that isn't dependent on past labels. The relationship between Bob and Calvin functions as a primary catalyst for both character arcs. Their dynamic begins with imbalance. Bob is overly enthusiastic and emotionally intense, while Calvin is hesitant and guarded. Over time, this imbalance shifts toward mutual influence. Bob learns emotional grounding and trust, while Calvin learns spontaneity and courage. Their friendship becomes a space where both characters are allowed to grow in ways they couldn't achieve alone. A notable aspect of their development is the way they challenge each other's self-perceptions. Bob sees Calvin as someone who represents stability and past kindness, while Calvin initially sees Bob as unpredictable and disruptive. As they spend more time together, these perceptions evolve. Bob begins to recognize Calvin's potential for bravery, while Calvin begins to see Bob's vulnerability beneath his confident exterior. This mutual recognition is essential to their development, letting both characters move beyond simplistic self-definitions. Secondary characters also contribute to the main arcs, particularly through their roles as external pressure points. Calvin's wife, Maggie, represents stability and domestic reality, grounding him in his everyday life. Her presence highlights the contrast between his ordinary existence and the extraordinary events unfolding around him. CIA figures, including Pamela Harris, introduce ambiguity and mistrust, forcing Calvin to question his assumptions and make independent judgments. The antagonistic elements of the story, while primarily plot-driven, also serve to reinforce character development. As the mystery surrounding the missing encryption key unfolds, both Bob and Calvin are placed in situations that require adaptation and cooperation, and these external pressures accelerate their internal growth, pushing them to confront fears and limitations they'd otherwise avoid. The visual environment of Central Intelligence is shaped not only by cinematography, but also by its carefully considered costume and set design, both of which play an important role in reinforcing character identity, social contrast, and tonal balance. While the film doesn't rely on highly stylized or extravagant design choices, its wardrobe and environments are deliberately constructed to reflect personality, history, and transformation in subtle but effective ways. Costume design is especially important in distinguishing the two central characters played by Dwayne Johnson and Kevin Hart. Bob Stone's wardrobe is an extension of his personality, bold, unconventional, and slightly exaggerated. He frequently wears tight-fitting clothing that emphasizes his muscular physique, often paired with bright or stylized colors that reflect his confidence and intensity. His clothing choices suggest someone who has fully embraced a new identity and isn't afraid to stand out, though there's also an underlying sense of overcompensation in his appearance, hinting at the insecurity beneath his confident exterior. Calvin Joyner's wardrobe, by contrast, is intentionally understated. His clothing consists primarily of muted tones, standard office attire, and casual wear that blends into his environment. This design choice reflects his personality. At the beginning of the film are cautious, predictable, and socially restrained. His costumes don't draw attention, reinforcing his desire to remain unnoticed and avoid disruption. As the film progresses and Calvin becomes more involved in the unfolding events, subtle changes in his wardrobe begin to reflect his internal transformation. His clothing becomes slightly more relaxed and less rigid, symbolizing his gradual shift toward confidence and adaptability. The contrast between Bob and Calvin's costumes visually reinforces the central theme of duality. One character is visually loud and expressive, while the other is visually subdued and restrained. This contrast is not only comedic but also symbolic, highlighting their opposing approaches to life and identity. As their friendship develops, the visual contrast remains, but it begins to feel less like opposition and more like balance. Secondary characters also use costume design to communicate role and authority. CIA agents, including Pamela Harris, played by Amy Ryan, are typically dressed in professional, neutral-toned attire that emphasizes control and institutional authority. Their clothing is structured, minimal, and functional, reinforcing the seriousness of their roles within the narrative. This contrasts sharply with Bob Stone's more expressive clothing, visually separating the world of espionage from the more chaotic emotional world of the protagonists. The high school setting plays a particularly important role in the film's costume design. In the opening sequence, students are dressed in exaggerated representations of teenage stereotypes. Athletes, popular students, and outsiders are all visually distinguished through clothing that reflects social hierarchy. Bob's younger self, Robbie Weirdicht, is intentionally costumed in a way that emphasizes his vulnerability and social exclusion. His appearance is uncomfortable and awkward, reinforcing the emotional impact of his humiliation. Calvin's younger wardrobe, meanwhile, reflects his popularity and confidence, aligning with his status as the admired student. The high school reunion scene revisits these costume dynamics in a more grounded way. Former students return dressed in a mix of nostalgic attempts at sophistication and casual adult attire. This blend of styles visually represents the passage of time and the evolution of identity, as some characters attempt to reclaim their past status through appearance, while others appear indifferent, reflecting their acceptance of adulthood. This environment allows costume design to become a storytelling tool, illustrating how individuals change, or fail to change, over time. Set design in the film is equally important in establishing tone and narrative context. The environments range from mundane suburban and office spaces to more stylized espionage locations, reflecting the film's genre blending. Calvin's workplace is designed with a sense of order and predictability. Clean desks, neutral colors, and structured layouts reinforce his controlled lifestyle. These spaces feel safe but uninspiring, visually communicating his emotional stagnation. Bob's environments, in contrast, are more dynamic and unpredictable. CIA relay locations are often depicted with a modern, high-tech aesthetic, including sleek surfaces, dim lighting, and complex equipment. Spaces that represent secrecy, power, and danger. Even within these environments, though, there's a sense of controlled chaos, reflecting the unpredictable nature of Bob's involvement in the agency. The high school itself is one of the most symbolically important sets in the film. It serves as a physical and emotional anchor to the story, representing both past trauma and unresolved identity. The gymnasium, in particular, is used as a central location during the opening humiliation scene and the final confrontation. Its large, open space emphasizes exposure and vulnerability, making it an ideal setting for moments of emotional intensity. The repetition of this location at key narrative points reinforces the cyclical structure of the story. Residential and suburban settings also play a significant role in grounding the film. Calvin's home is designed to reflect stability and routine, with comfortable but unremarkable furnishings representing safety, but also emotional imitation. These environments contrast with the more chaotic spaces Bob brings into Calvin's life, visually representing the disruption of his predictable world. Lighting within the set design further enhances emotional tone. Warm lighting is often used in domestic or comedic scenes, creating a sense of familiarity and comfort, while cooler or harsher lighting is used in action or interrogation scenes, emphasizing tension and uncertainty. This subtle manipulation of environment helps guide audience emotion without drawing attention away from the characters. The screenplay of Central Intelligence is built around a simple but effective foundation, contrasting personalities placed in high-pressure, high-absurdity situations. Written by Ike Barinholtz and David Stassen and directed with a strong emphasis on improvisational energy by Rawson Marshall Thurber, the script prioritizes character voice, comedic timing, and emotional accessibility over complex narrative intricacy. The dialogue is designed to feel natural and reactive, often giving space for performers like Dwayne Johnson and Kevin Hart to reshape lines through performance. At its core, the script relies heavily on the odd couple dynamic. Bob Stone's dialogue is characterized by enthusiasm, literal interpretation, and emotional openness. He often speaks in a way that's overly direct, occasionally awkward, and sometimes unexpectedly vulnerable. This contrasts sharply with Calvin Joyner, whose dialogue is faster, more anxious, and often filled with defensive humor or disbelief. This contrast creates a rhythmic back and forth that drives much of the film's comedic energy. One of the defining features of the script is its use of escalation in dialogue scenes. Conversations rarely remain static, and instead, they build in intensity or absurdity as characters react to each other. A simple misunderstanding often snowballs into a larger comedic or narrative complication. This technique keeps the pacing dynamic and ensures that even exposition-heavy scenes remain engaging. The dialogue is rarely just informational, but is always layered with personality and reaction. Kevin Hart's character is particularly important in shaping the script's comedic identity. His lines often reflect panic, frustration, or disbelief, delivered at a rapid pace that amplifies the humor of a situation. Much of his dialogue functions as a reaction to the increasingly strange events unfolding around him, and this reactive style allows the audience to experience the story through his perspective, grounding the more extreme elements of the plot in relatable emotional responses. Dwayne Johnson's dialogue, in contrast, often plays against expectations. Bob Stone speaks with confidence and emotional sincerity, even in situations where such openness feels inappropriate or unexpected. This creates humor through contrast rather than punchliners. Moments that might traditionally be played with restraint in action films are instead delivered with enthusiasm or emotional intensity, subverting audience expectations. Johnson's willingness to fully commit to these lines is a key reason the dialogue works as effectively as it does. The script also makes frequent use of repetition and callback humor. Certain phrases or ideas introduced early in the film are revisited later, often with altered meaning or increased comedic weight. This technique helps create cohesion within the dialogue and rewards audience attention, while also reinforcing character development, since repeated lines can take on new significance depending on how the characters have changed over time. A notable aspect of the screenplay is its balance between scripted dialogue and improvisation. While the core structure of scenes is carefully written, many individual exchanges were shaped or expanded during filming. This is especially evident in scenes between Johnson and Hart, where natural comedic rhythm often takes precedence over strict adherence to the script. The flexibility of the writing allows performers to inject personality into their lines, making conversations feel spontaneous and authentic. The film's humor often emerges from discomfort and social awkwardness, rather than traditional joke structures. Many scenes are built around situations where characters are placed in emotionally or socially awkward positions and forced to navigate them in real time, including moments of mistaken identity, miscommunication, and exaggerated emotional reactions. The script allows these situations to unfold gradually, giving space for tension to build before it's released through humor. Exposition in the screenplay is handled in a deliberately casual manner. Rather than long explanatory monologues, information is often revealed through fragmented dialogue, interruptions, or conflicting accounts from different characters. CIA-related plot points, for example, are frequently introduced in chaotic or uncertain ways, reflecting the film's playful approach to spy genre conventions. This prevents the exposition from feeling heavy-handed while maintaining narrative clarity. Supporting characters also contribute to the film's dialogue structure, though in more limited ways. Characters such as Pamela Harris, played by Amy Ryan, use more controlled and formal language, reinforcing their institutional roles. This contrast in speech style helps distinguish authority figures from the more emotionally expressive protagonists even within supporting roles. Dialogue is used to reinforce hierarchy and tone. The script also explores themes through subtext rather than explicit statements. Bob's emotional vulnerability, for example, is rarely directly addressed in serious terms, so instead, it's revealed through casual comments, over-enthusiastic explanations, or moments of unexpected honesty. Similarly, Calvin's insecurity is often expressed through humor or avoidance rather than direct confession. This approach lets emotional depth coexist with comedy without disrupting the tone. One of the strengths of the screenplay is its understanding of timing. The spacing of dialogue, the pauses between lines, and the interruptions are all carefully constructed to enhance comedic effect. Many jokes rely not on what is said, but on when it's said and how the other characters react to it. Silence is also used effectively, particularly in moments where characters process unexpected information or awkward situations. The script also reflects a strong awareness of genre expectations. It frequently plays with spy thriller tropes as secret identities, government conspiracies, double-crosses, but filters them through comedic dialogue. Characters often react to espionage elements with confusion or disbelief, grounding the genre in a more relatable emotional framework. This self-awareness allows the film to parody familiar structures without completely abandoning them. The marketing campaign for Central Intelligence was carefully designed to highlight its strongest commercial asset, the unexpected pairing of Dwayne Johnson and Kevin Hart. Rather than relying heavily on plot details or complex narrative hooks, the promotional strategy focused on personality, chemistry, and humor. The film was positioned not just as an action comedy, but as a showcase for two highly recognizable entertainers interacting in unpredictable and entertaining ways. One of the central pillars of the campaign was the contrast between the two leads. Promotional materials consistently emphasized their physical and comedic differences. Posters, trailers, and interviews framed the film around the idea of big meets small, both literally and figuratively. This visual and conceptual contrast became instantly recognizable and helped the film stand out in a crowded summer release schedule. The marketing didn't try to hide the tonal blend of action and comedy. Instead, it leaned into it, presenting the film as a hybrid experience. The official trailers played a crucial role in shaping audience expectations. Early trailers introduced the premise of Calvin Joyner, played by Kevin Hart, being pulled into a dangerous espionage situation by his old high school acquaintance, Bob Stone. The trailers carefully balanced comedic moments with brief glimpses of action sequences, ensuring audiences understood the film wasn't purely a comedy or purely an action film, but a combination of both. The tone of the trailers closely mirrored the film itself, fast-paced, humorous, and character-driven. A key marketing strategy was the heavy use of interviews and promotional appearances featuring Johnson and Hart together. Their natural chemistry became a major promotional tool. During press tours, talk show appearances, and red carpet events, the two actors engaged in playful banter, improvisation, and mock arguments. These appearances often went viral, generating significant online engagement, and in many cases the promotional content became almost as popular as the film's actual marketing materials, reinforcing the idea that the actors themselves were part of the entertainment product. Social media also played a significant role in the film's promotion. Platforms such as Twitter and Instagram were used extensively to share clips, behind-the-scenes moments, and humorous interactions between the cast. Short video segments highlighting improvisation, bloopers, and comedic exchanges helped build anticipation and familiarity before the film's release. This strategy was particularly effective in reaching younger audiences, who consume promotional content primarily through digital platforms. The marketing campaign also emphasized the film's comedic tone through short teaser clips. These clips often focused on isolated humorous moments rather than narrative context, such as exaggerated reactions from Kevin Hart's character or awkwardly sincere statements from Dwayne Johnson's character. By isolating these moments, the marketing positioned the film as highly quotable and meme-friendly, encouraging audience sharing and online discussion. Another important aspect of the promotional strategy was the use of nostalgia. The marketing subtly referenced the high school setting and the transformation of characters over time, appealing to audiences' shared experiences of adolescence and adulthood. While not heavily emphasized, this element added emotional depth to the promotional messaging, suggesting that the film was about more than just comedy. It was also about personal growth and reconnection with the past. The film's poster design reflected its core marketing philosophy. Most versions featured Johnson and Hart side by side, often with contrasting body language or expressions that reinforced their opposing personalities. The visual simplicity of the posters made them easily recognizable, while the emphasis on the two leads ensured immediate brand clarity. The design avoided clutter or excessive detail, relying instead on star power and visual contrast. Television advertising also played a significant role in reaching broader audiences. Short commercials were broadcast during major sporting events and primetime television slots, targeting viewers likely to respond to action comedy content. These ads typically highlighted the most energetic and humorous moments from the film, reinforcing its identity as a fast-paced, entertaining experience. An additional layer of the marketing campaign involved strategic timing. The film was released during the summer season, a period traditionally associated with high-profile entertainment releases. This timing allowed it to capitalize on audiences seeking light, accessible films, and the marketing reinforced this positioning by emphasizing the film's fun, escapist qualities rather than deeper thematic complexity. The promotional tour also included international outreach, reflecting the global appeal of its stars. Dwayne Johnson's established international fan base and Kevin Hart's growing global recognition made the film a strong candidate for worldwide marketing efforts. Press tours and promotional events in multiple countries helped build anticipation across diverse markets, reinforcing the film's status as a global entertainment product. Another notable aspect of the campaign was its emphasis on improvisation and behind-the-scenes content. Audiences were given glimpses of how scenes were created, including moments where the actors deviated from the script. This approach helped humanize the production and reinforce the idea that the film was built on genuine chemistry and spontaneous humor. It also encouraged repeat engagement, as fans sought out additional clips and interviews beyond the main trailers. The marketing strategy also benefited from the established reputations of its lead actors. Dwayne Johnson was already known for his roles in action franchises, while Kevin Hart had a strong presence in stand-up comedy and ensemble films. The campaign effectively combined these two brand identities, presenting the film as a natural extension of both careers while also offering something new through their pairing. In addition to traditional marketing channels, the film's promotional efforts extended into digital culture. Memes, GIFs, and short clips from the film circulated widely online, often repurposed by users in humorous or relatable contexts. This organic spread of content helped sustain interest in the film beyond its initial release window, contributing to its long-term visibility. When examining central intelligence within the broader landscape of action comedies, it becomes clear that the film draws heavily from established genre conventions while also refining them through modern casting, pacing, and character chemistry. Rather than attempting to reinvent the genre, it works as a synthesis of earlier buddy comedies and contemporary action-driven storytelling, shaped significantly by the performances of Dwayne Johnson and Kevin Hart. One of the most direct comparisons can be made with earlier buddy cop and buddy comedy films, such as Rush Hour. Like Central Intelligence, Rush Hour relies on the contrast between two mismatched personalities forced into cooperation. However, while Rush Hour leans heavily into the cultural and linguistic differences between its leads, Central Intelligence focuses more on emotional contrast, past versus present identity, confidence versus insecurity, extroversion versus restraint. This shift reflects a more modern approach to character-driven comedy, where internal psychology replaces external stereotypes as the main source of humor and conflict. Another useful comparison is with Ride Along, another Kevin Hart-led action comedy. Both films use Hart's high-energy comedic style and place him alongside a more physically dominant partner. However, Ride Along leans more heavily into traditional cop movie tropes, while Central Intelligence expands its scope into espionage and identity transformation. Additionally, the chemistry in Central Intelligence is often considered more balanced, as Dwayne Johnson's comedic performance is more fully integrated into the narrative compared to the more straight-man roles seen in other pairings. Within Dwayne Johnson's filmography, Central Intelligence can be compared to films like Get Smart and The Other Guys, both of which explore comedic subversions of traditional action archetypes. Unlike those films, though, where Johnson often appears in supporting or cameo roles designed for comedic shock value, Central Intelligence places him at the emotional center of the story. This gives the comedic performance more narrative weight and allows for deeper exploration of vulnerability, particularly in relation to his character's past trauma. Compared to more traditional action comedy hybrids like Bad Boys 2, Central Intelligence is less focused on spectacle and more focused on interpersonal dynamics. While Bad Boys 2 emphasizes explosive action sequences and stylized bravado, Central Intelligence balances its action with emotional storytelling and comedic improvisation. This reflects a broader industry shift toward character-driven humor in the 2010s, where audience engagement is increasingly tied to personality rather than purely physical spectacle. Another important comparison can be made with ensemble-driven comedies such as The Other Guys, which similarly combines satire, action, and comedy. Both films use exaggerated contrast between characters to create humor, but Central Intelligence narrows its focus to a two-character dynamic, allowing for more sustained emotional development. This structural difference results in a more intimate narrative, even within the framework of a large-scale action story. In terms of thematic similarity, the film also shares elements with coming-of-age narratives. Despite its adult setting, films like Spider-Man: Homecoming explore identity, self-worth, and the tension between expectation and reality are themes that are also central to Calvin Joyner's arc. However, Central Intelligence explores these ideas through the lens of adulthood regret rather than adolescent discovery. This inversion gives the film a reflective quality, as it examines what happens after the coming-of-age moment has already passed. From a tonal perspective, Central Intelligence sits between broad slapstick comedies and more grounded action dramas. It avoids the extreme absurdity of films like The Hangover, while also not committing fully to the realism of traditional espionage thrillers. Instead, it occupies a middle space where humor emerges from believable emotional reactions placed in unlikely situations.